93% of the business owners that we've talked to since 2011, 93% are overpaying on their tax. They're unintentionally tipping the government. Now, I'm sure you're happy with what they're doing with the money, but maybe you could do something better. My favorite thing to do is just look at my life and ask questions that I know they would normally say, you can't write that off, and think of ways to write it off. So I go, hey, we rented a villa in Italy, and we're gonna go spend a couple months there. Can I write that off? And then they laugh, and I go, no, I'm serious. Like, let's talk about how we could write this trip off. Number one, you can actually do an annual corporate compliance meeting anywhere you want, and I think better in Italy. Then I said, well, I'm gonna go see where my family's from and get some footage there because I'm bringing my camera guy with me. And I'm actually gonna do a one-day mastermind since I'll be out there for 60 days for our inner circle. So I just go through it. By the end of the call, we wrote off 55% of a trip. I'm not here to tell you to wait 30 years, save a bunch of money, invest it in speculative things. I'm here to give you 4 main I's right now that will put money in your pocket immediately and save you 10 or 20 years. So the first I, and these are all gonna be win then play for the rest of the time. I hope I'm done giving the bad news. I'll just give good news that helps you out. And if I give bad news, I'll make fun of it. Is that fair? Okay, so the first I, and I guess it could be a T if you're not from the United States, but it's the IRS, or tax. 93% of the business owners that we've talked to since 2011, 93% are overpaying on their tax. They're unintentionally tipping the government. Now, I'm sure you're happy with what they're doing with the money, but maybe you could do something better. So I'll give you just a quick insight on the framework of that. The first piece is, these are the obvious pieces, and then I'm gonna get to the less obvious pieces that really make a big difference. The first piece is, you have to have a tax team. So that team consists of up to 4 people. Number one is someone that's just good with record keeping. It could be a bookkeeper, a controller, or a CFO, depending on the size of your organization. The second one is a tax strategist. A tax strategist may or may not be a CPA. Some CPAs are historians, and they're just looking at the data, and they're having you pay tax on previous data. I need someone that looks forward with you and starts to develop a strategy that could be implemented. Oh, thank you. And I'll give you some really cool ways to do that, by the way, so that you can practically implement that. The third piece is an attorney. That attorney may be a corporate attorney, or it may be a tax attorney. But the attorney will likely save you more money than the tax strategist, and I'll get into that once again in a minute. The fourth person, does anyone own a brick and mortar building here? If you own a brick and mortar building, the fourth one is an option for you. It's an engineer, specifically a cost segregation engineer. Cost segregation allows you to accelerate the tax depreciation on the building so that you'll save a bunch more money, okay? So up to 4 people on the team. Now, you wanna meet with this team at least quarterly. It might only be 20 minutes. The longest meeting I've ever had is an hour. And I found like some with a personality on that team so I can tease and joke with them. Like the first time I had the tax strategist on the meeting, I said, hey, you know the difference between an introverted CPA and an extroverted CPA? He's like, no, what? I'm like, well, when an introverted CPA talks to me, you know, they look at their shoes. When the extroverted CPA talks to me, they look at my shoes. Yeah. That's as good as the jokes get, folks. You know. So that's the team, but you meet with them quarterly, and this is what that conversation sounds like. That meeting, there's no one that's gonna say what you do on the meeting is illegal or illegal. So it's your job to think outside of the box and be an entrepreneur on that. You're gonna ask a ton of questions like, hey, tell me the coolest strategy you've done for someone in the last while. Like since we spoke last. Are there any new tax changes that impact me? Is 199A something that I need to be aware of? Are there additional deductions I could take? And then my favorite thing to do is just look at my life and ask questions that I know they would normally say, you can't write that off, and think of ways to write it off. So I go, hey, we rented a villa in Italy, and we're gonna go spend a couple months there. Can I write that off? And then they laugh, and I go, no, I'm serious. Like, let's talk about how we could write this trip off. Number one, you can actually do an annual corporate compliance meeting anywhere you want, and I think better in Italy. So We go there. Then I said, well, I'm going to go see where my family's from and get some footage there because I'm bringing my camera guy with me. And I'm actually going to do a one-day mastermind since I'll be out there for 60 days for our inner circle. So I just go through it. By the end of the call, we wrote off 55% of a trip. Simply because I brainstormed, and their job is to tell me legal or not legal, and I choose the legal path. But I have to ask the questions because they're not necessarily thinking that way, right? Now, the other secret to this is you want to go back 3 years in your returns and see if you missed anything because you can amend your returns. When my partners died and things were chaotic, I didn't meet with my accountants and tax team. I just tried to keep everything together. Well, 2 years later, when things settled down, I went back and looked. I had overpaid my tax $54,000, $40,000 federal, $14,000 or $15,000 on the state, and I was able to go back and amend and get that money back. Okay, so you want to get a different set of eyes, a different tax strategist every 3 years to go back. And this year, we did just that. We weren't able to go back, but we were able to create new tax strategy for next year. So it's really great because sometimes they just get used to you. You get used to them, and there's a really comfortable relationship. And someone else comes in trying to prove themselves, and they start asking and thinking a little bit differently, and it opens up the world. And I tell them, I'll pay your hourly fee for this call, but I'll double it if you find something. That's what I tell them. So that's the first leg of tax. There's 2 more legs that we're going to go through. The second one, because imagine if you get $20,000 of savings in tax. What we find is for every $250,000 that someone makes in revenue, they're overpaying their taxes on average $10,470. And that's not revenue, that's spendable cash in your pocket. That's money that you can take that doesn't have to go through the gauntlet of paying for employees or ads or, all that kind of stuff. So part 2, a lot of you will know pieces of this. I just want to take it a little bit deeper. It's deductions. So your tax strategist is primarily responsible for your tax deductions. Those tax deductions look like this. The corporate compliance that we just talked about would be one, but your question you ask is, how does this relate to my business? That's the number 1 question. The number 2 thing you do is you document. How does it relate to the business? And you document. Now let me give you a few things that most people miss when it comes to deductions. I love my kids, but they're expensive. The nice thing is I can pay them $12,000 a year on the new tax plan, and that's 100% tax-free for them and tax deductible for my business. Now I have to actually have them do things, which sometimes, I gotta tell you, my kids are stupid genius. Do you know what stupid genius is? I could be trying to type in a 17-digit Apple passcode. They could listen through the wall, and they're like, that's a capital G, no, lowercase. That's an ampersand. Well, you almost got us, Dad. And then they could go buy something without me knowing. But I could be like, hey, guys, can you sweep the porch? And they're like, what do you mean sweep the porch? I'm like, you hold the broom and you walk. And they'll be like, it drops as they walk. And I'm like, and by the end, I'm sweeping the porch for them. And then they're like, good job, Dad. Stupid genius, right? Just stupid genius. The genius of the stuff they get us to do. So I can pay them up to $12,000. I still control that bank account, but that's 100% tax deductible to my business and 100% tax free to them. Here's the easiest one. They're all models. We love them. I think they're so cute. So we just put them up on a website, $2,500 modeling fee. That's the union standard. That's the easy one. If you pay them $2,500 to mow your lawn, that isn't going to hold up. I've had them come up on stage with me. I've had them hand out books. I've had them go through courses, absolutely make them justify what it is that I'm paying them. Another example would be, you can have a home office and write off a ton of your utilities. And if an accountant tells you that you can't, I've read the law. You can. You absolutely can. And by the way, if your accountant tells you they're conservative, let me tell you what they're really saying. Antiquated. They're telling you you're missing tax deductions, and when you catch them, they're going to say, but I'm being conservative. I've been doing this since 1998. We've had someone owe a tiny bit of money in one audit, and someone else that was transitioning to us owe $5,500 in an audit since 1998. Those are our 2 bad stories. I don't do anything offshore. I don't do anything that's in the gray area. I just maximize every single thing that's available for you, because the first 300 pages of the tax code are why you have to pay tax. The next 5,300 are all the ways to navigate the system tax-free. Granted, nobody wants to read those. I'm glad there's weirdos that do. and then I just disseminate that so that we can all understand it, right?
Want to master your money? Want to figure out the things that you could do to improve your finances? Click here and check out more videos like this on Money Matters.